InvestorIdeas.com podcast.
Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of InvestorIdeas.com podcast. Today's podcast is sponsored by Cannabis Swiss Corporation, trading on the OTC as CSUI, a fully licensed cannabis cultivation and distribution company in Switzerland for recreational tobacco products and medical CBD oils. And the company's products are laboratory tested to ensure that the end users have access to a standardized, safe, and consistent product. And Cannabis Swiss Corp currently sells via distribution network of Swiss retailers and online shops under the retail brand Alpine Cannabis. In today's podcast, we look at a few public company announcements, looking at Decibel Cannabis Company Incorporated, trading on the TSXV Venture as DB and the OTCQB as DBCCF. Also looking at AMP German Cannabis Group Incorporated, trading on the CSE as XCX, as well as Numinous Wellness Incorporated, trading on the TSX Venture as NUMI. First, looking at Decibel Cannabis Company Incorporated, a premium cannabis producer and retailer who announced the launch of cannabis derivative products produced at its extraction facility, The Plant. Now, our product strategy is driven by our intimate knowledge of the end consumer through our Prairie Records retail stores, says Adam Coates, the Chief Growth Officer of Decibel. Now, this position allows us insights such as identifying white space opportunities that the current market is not fulfilling, and understanding key product attributes consumers are looking for in established formats. Now, with these insights, we are planning on launching black market quality concentrates, high potency, strain specific vapes, and Q line of fast acting 10 milligram THC shop beverage style beverages. Some of the product launch highlights included were that the first shipments of products from the 10 SKUs, which are now currently available in cannabis retail stores across BC, Alberta, and Saskatchewan, launched in the late third quarter. Decibel's first derivative product launches under the Blendcraft by Quest banner in the 4 SKUs of Wax Crumble and 4 SKUs of Shatter. Now, these high-potency, in-demand concentrates complemented the rare cultivar craft dried flower products that the company produces under the Quest family of brands, as well as the Q fast-acting cannabis shots. And the company has entered into a definitive agreement with Origin Scientific Incorporated, a private Canadian company, to manufacture and distribute Q fast-acting cannabis shots. And Q has developed an industry-leading, clinically proven, and patented nano-encapsulation technology that's been formulated into a fast-acting cannabis-infused shot-style beverage. The Q Lemon Tea, a 59 milliliter cannabis shot with 10 milligrams of THC and 30 milligrams of naturally occurring caffeine, is expected to be the initial product offering, which the company anticipates will be launching for sale in late November. So looking at Decibel Cannabis, this is definitely something that now we're starting to see is the payoff for some of these companies that are vertically integrated, especially for the retailers who are now going to be starting to launch their own separate private product labels into their retail stores. We've seen this with a few of the Canadian retailers, and we're seeing it more and more in the US. And I do think this is going to be a continuing trend. There's been a few announcements last week that followed this line, as well as over the last coming months, where you've seen now these retailers, as they have sort of the access to the consumer data and are a little bit more aware of where there are gaps, as I mentioned there by Adam Coates, their Chief Growth Officer, the white spaces within their shelving opportunities. That's something that's starting to be noticed by a lot of these retail companies, and it is the whole reason why a lot of them did set up this ability to be vertically integrated and to have these production facilities to then build out their product portfolios in the future and have exclusive product offerings either done through their own facilities or, again, in partnership with some different producers or extractors. So like I said, I would expect to see more of this both in the Canadian market and US market abroad, as you see, again, these companies have a better understanding of the gaps within their retail development, as well as, again, now that these companies are better prepared to have those partnerships with these production or extraction companies to produce those products quickly and actually bring them to market. Looking next at AMP German Cannabis Group Incorporated, who announced it will be adding Little Green Pharma Limited, trading on the ASX as LGP, cannabis oil medicines to its catalog for sale in Germany beginning of November 2020, subject to obtaining a BTM registration or narcotic drug license of these products on behalf of the AMP. AMP is currently looking forward to offering premium EU GMP full plant extract cannabis oil medicines branded from the LGP Classic brand, produced by the same consistent strains, and AMP wants to introduce the LGP brand to the German market by selling LGP Classic 20.5 oils. So Little Green Pharma is licensed to cultivate and produce medical cannabis in Australia and has obtained the required licenses and permits to export to Germany. And Little Green Pharma has its own therapeutic goods administration manufacturing facility in addition to 6-year exclusive manufacturing agreement with a third party. Now, Dr. Stefan Faurstein, the director and president of AMP, said, "We had a lot of requests for medical cannabis oils during our recent sales trip through Germany, where we met with medium-sized distributors and large pharmacists that are specializing in medical cannabis. Now, to meet this demand, we're introducing the premium LGB Classic brand as our first extract brand to the German market. And we wanted our first extract in the product line to be a premium full plant extract that our sales team can introduce along with our other medical cannabis flower products. And we will be adding additional cannabis oils in the coming months to the safety of our consumers' strong demand for this product line." So obviously I've been talking a lot about the EU marketplace and sort of the development specifically of a lot of the subsectors there. So the German marketplace has obviously been talked a lot about within the cannabis space. There's a lot of Canadian producers as well as a few other international producers who are entering into that space. And now we're seeing Little Green Pharma. Their cannabis oils are being brought to the German market hopefully for early November or late November this year. And this is, again, another thing that we're now starting to see actually play out this year, which has been a long anticipation, much more so than, expectations surrounding Cannabis 2.0 products in Canada, but actually now seeing the launch of products within the different EU marketplaces. So Germany actually expanding their portfolio of products. Obviously, even our sponsor, Cannabis Swiss Corporation, having more products in Switzerland. All of those markets are really starting to expand now. And this is where you're starting to actually see a lot of those long-term plays start to pan out for the industry. So, for instance, Little Green Pharma, obviously having their production facilities in Australia. The Australian cannabis market has had lots of difficulties surrounding the medical infrastructure of it, and especially some difficulties as well with their own internal market and then export licenses. But again, for the companies that have been planning this export market into Europe, they're now well positioned, and you can start to see that that's going to pay off. So I would expect to see more, maybe not a huge pile of companies coming out of Australia at least, but at least, again, from an international perspective, you're going to start to see more and more product offerings start to pop up onto the EU marketplaces. And we'll actually start to see what the overall international cannabis space is going to start to look like now that we see all of these import and export licenses being granted and in full swing. Lastly, today, looking at Numinous Wellness Incorporated, a company creating an ecosystem of health solutions centered on developing and supporting the safe, evidence-based, accessible use of psychedelic-assisted psychotherapies, who announced that they have harvested the first legal flush of psilocybin mushrooms in Canada by a public company under its Health Canada-issued Controlled Drugs and Substances Dealer's license. Now, this news coincides with other recent developments by Numinous Biosciences, the company's 7,000 square foot analytics and research laboratory, which is focused on handling various psychedelic substances and developing analytical methods and formulations for the evolving psychedelic space. This first harvest of legally grown psilocybin mushrooms is a significant milestone for the whole industry, said Michael Tan, the Chief Operating Officer. Now we can progress with research and development of standardizing cultivation, extraction, and testing methods and exploring product formulations to support safe, evidence-based, accessible psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy, as well as build on a sequence for library. Now, Dennis McKenna, renowned ethnopharmacologist, co-founder of the Heifer Research Institute, founder of the McKenna Academy of Natural Philosophy, and member of Numinous General Advisory Council, adds, "While there is a place for synthetic psilocybin in clinical practice, well-characterized and standardized extracts of natural forms of psilocybin, i.e. mushrooms, cultivated and processed under stringent quality control protocols, are the wave of the future as the therapeutic psilocybin gains acceptance. Now, given a choice, many people would prefer the option to use natural psilocybin, and mushrooms have been used in traditional medicine for literally thousands of years, and hence they are just that much closer to these ancient traditions. Now, natural mushroom extracts are also likely to be far more affordable compared to synthetic psilocybin, and that is an important consideration when it comes to ensuring accessibility to this medicine, which can be so beneficial to many people. And cost should not be a barrier to access, as these medicines and the use of mushroom extracts will help ensure those who need them most can benefit from psilocybin therapies." Now, Numinous Biosciences is establishing itself at the forefront of analytical testing for psychedelic substances as a center for excellence of psychedelic product research and development, and as an ancillary for psychedelic therapy clinical trials. Now, Health Canada licenses scientific expertise and state-of-the-art technologies facilitate ongoing innovation, while revenue through the high-throughput contract cannabis testing is reinvented and reinvested to further in its psychedelic initiatives. And in addition to today's announcement, NUMI also includes in its recent developments an amendment application to its Health Canada issued Controlled Drugs and Substances license. The current license permits testing, import, and export, storage, and distribution of MDMA, psilocybin, psilocin, DMT, and mescaline, as well as the undertaking of novel mycological research initiatives. And the amendment will additionally permit the sale of psilocybin mushroom fruiting bodies and extract for clinical research protocols and the development of standardized testing and additional psychedelic substances. So, obviously, I've talked a lot about sort of where the psychedelic and psilocybin industry is right now. So now having this first harvest of legal mushrooms in Canada from a public company is a pretty big step forward for the field of mycology, especially for the field of psychedelics right now. And allowing these systems to then be standardized and having new cultivation and spore techniques is going to be a very interesting turn of events as we see this sort of psychedelic wave unfold. What I do find interesting is now we're also starting to see on a smaller scale level a series of private companies, and you're starting to see more and more of these pop up that are actually also selling grow kits right now. And this is something that I do think is going to be a very strange development for this industry, especially when compared to the cannabis industry, is this focus on natural occurring mushrooms as opposed to synthetic psilocybin. And that's been sort of reiterated from most of the discussions you're seeing from most of these companies, most of the research in the field. Obviously, having Dennis McKenna, who is obviously a well-known figure within the psychedelic space, reiterate that point. I do think it's going to be interesting to see how this market unfolds and where you start to see products actually getting developed. It's also going to be interesting to see what kind of possibilities there are with the sort of home grow kit market. Again, as there are actually legal precedent, especially in Canada right now, where you can sell these grow kits because they would have no active psilocybin in them until they are bloomed to a certain extent. So as these grow kits become available, and especially as these systems and sort of techniques for cultivating mushrooms become simpler and more understood by the general public, especially those who are looking into psilocybin for medical benefits or microdosing, whatever the reason there is, there's going to be a very cost-effective and easy approach for cultivating mushrooms at home that most people will be able to do at not only a very affordable price, but also compared to even just most plant growth. Mushroom cultivation can be extremely simple by comparison to even growing tomatoes, as you need much more limited resources. Also, these grow kits tend to be pretty much just spray and leave, and you can get a significant amount of mushrooms cultivated from a single small spore kit. So if you're buying large amounts of them, or if you had a whole greenhouse, you could be growing an insane amount of mushrooms, and not only just psychedelic mushrooms, but also edible mushrooms for just general protein. So I do think that that's really where some of these companies that are in the psychedelic space right now, or in the mushroom space in general, are making a smart play in also having their company built around standardization and methodology, because I do think that those types of data and information are going to become extremely valuable as the general public's understanding of mycology grows, and also as the general interest in mycology grows. And again, as these options become more available, I think that there's going to be a very different sort of consumer market than we really expect compared to the cannabis industry for the psychedelics industry, because again, there is this focus on non-synthetic versions which can be readily available. That's all for today's podcast, and once again, today's podcast was sponsored by Cannabis Swiss Corporation, trading on the OTC as CSUI, a fully licensed cannabis cultivation and distribution company in Switzerland for recreational tobacco products and medical CBD oils. That's all for today's podcast. Podcast is now a certified word trademark on the blockchain through Cognate Incorporated CM certification. InvestorIdeas.com podcasts are also available on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play Music, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and TuneIn. If you'd like to be a guest or sponsor of this podcast, please contact InvestorIdeas.com. Investor Ideas reminds all listeners to read our disclaimers and disclosures on the InvestorIdeas.com website, and this podcast is not an endorsement to buy products or services or securities. Investors are reminded that all investments involve risk and possible loss of investment. Investor Ideas does not condone the use of cannabis except where permissible by law. Our site does not possess, distribute, or sell cannabis products.